In the heart of the galaxy, among stars that shimmered like diamonds, lay the grand kingdom of Valora. It was a realm ruled by proud and noble beings. The Velorans, tall and elegant, with eyes that glowed faintly and minds strong enough to control energy itself. Their technology was centuries ahead of most species, and they saw themselves as the guardians of all knowledge. But not everyone shared in their greatness. On a small blue world far from the shining cities of Valora lived the humans, curious, emotional, and far less advanced in the eyes of the galaxy. To the Velorans, humans were simple and weak, limited by their short lives and fragile bodies. When the Veloran Council announced a political alliance with Earth, the news shocked everyone. An agreement was to be sealed through marriage, a symbolic union between both species to bring peace and cooperation. But no one expected Queen Seraphina of Valora herself to be chosen for it. Seraphina was known as the Radiant Queen. Her wisdom guided her people. Her beauty was said to calm storms, and her presence made even warriors bow. When she learned she would marry a human, her pride trembled for the first time. A queen of the stars bonded to a creature from a primitive world it felt beneath her, yet she accepted. Not out of love, not even out of duty. She accepted because she pitied them. "They are fragile things," she said to her royal advisor. "If this marriage makes them feel respected, I can endure it. It will be a kindness." Her advisor, a tall silver-skinned man named Calith, nodded slowly. "Your grace is endless, my queen. But humans are unpredictable. Keep your guard." Seraphina smiled faintly. "What could a human possibly do to surprise me?" When the day came, the queen stood on the royal terrace wearing a flowing gown made of light thread, its patterns shifting like stars. Behind her stood the entire royal court glowing with pride and curiosity. Across the silver platform walked her new husband, Elias Ward, a human diplomat from Earth. He was simple in form, shorter than most Valorans, his hair dark and his eyes calm. There was nothing extraordinary about him, no glowing aura, no regal posture, no hint of power. Yet when he bowed before her, there was something steady in him, a quiet dignity that didn't fit his fragile appearance. "Queen Seraphina," he said softly, "it is an honor to stand by your side." His voice was calm, polite, without fear. She studied him carefully. "Do humans always speak this way to their rulers?" she asked. He smiled. "Only when they respect them." That answer, though simple, made her pause. There was honesty in it, something few of her courtiers dared to show. Days turned into weeks. Elias lived in the palace, learning Valoran customs, dining at royal banquets and attending council meetings. The nobles whispered whenever he passed. "He looks so small beside her." One laughed quietly. "Do you think he even understands our technology?" Another said. "He must be terrified," added a third. Elias heard them all, but he never responded with anger. Instead, he observed, watched their energy systems, listened to their music, asked questions about their history. He was curious, patient, and respectful. One evening, Seraphina found him sitting in the royal garden, staring at the glowing blue flowers that only bloomed under starlight. "You sit there often," she said. "Do humans not rest?" He looked up and smiled. "We rest, my queen, but sometimes peace is found in learning, not sleeping." She tilted her head. "Learning what?" "How your world breathes," he replied. "Your people shaped energy into beauty. Humans try, but we have a long way to go." There was no envy in his tone, only admiration. The queen was surprised. She had expected jealousy or awe, not gentle curiosity. A few days later, the palace engineers faced a sudden crisis. The main energy reactor, which powered the capital's shields and sky bridges, started to malfunction. If it collapsed, thousands could die. Scientists and engineers rushed about trying to stop the overload. Seraphina stood in the control chamber giving sharp commands, her calm starting to crack. Then, unexpectedly, Elias stepped forward. "May I help?" he asked quietly. One of the Valoran engineers laughed. "Help? Human hands can't even touch the control interface without protection." But Elias walked closer to the display. His eyes studied the glowing symbols. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, an Earth-made analyzer. Within seconds, he began pressing a sequence of commands on the console. The alarm started to slow. The reactor's power stabilized, the room fell silent. How did you do that?" The chief engineer stammered. Elias turned to the queen and smiled humbly. "It was only a logic loop error. Your energy equations are beautiful, but one variable was missing: a feedback node. Serafina stared at him. No human should have understood Velaran math that fast. It took years to study their systems. Yet this man, this simple human, had seen through it in moments. When they were alone later, she asked him again, "Where did you learn that knowledge?" He looked up at the night sky. "On Earth, we survive by solving what we don't understand. Sometimes our lives depend on it." The Queen felt a strange emotion stir within her, something between respect and curiosity. Days passed. Elias became known among the servants as the quiet genius. He never demanded, never argued, never sought credit, but strange things started happening around him. The royal gardens bloomed earlier than usual. Machines that often malfunctioned began to work perfectly. Even the palace staff seemed calmer when he was near. The Queen noticed everything. At first, she dismissed it as coincidence. But one night, as she walked through the palace halls, she heard two guards whispering. "They say the human brings harmony," one said. "The Queen must have seen it too," replied the other. "Maybe he has some hidden gift." Serafina returned to her chamber thoughtful. She had pitied this man. She had thought him weak, soft, and unimportant. But something deep inside told her that he was hiding something that even he didn't boast about. A few weeks later, the Queen invited him to attend a council meeting. The discussion was about a growing threat, the Zareth Dominion, a warlike empire expanding across the stars. The generals spoke of weapons and battle plans. Elias sat quietly listening. Finally, the Queen turned to him. "Elias, what does your world think of war?" He paused before answering. "Humans hate it, yet we have known it longer than most species. We fight when we must, not because we enjoy it. And when we fight, we learn." The general smirked. "Learn? What can humans learn from war except fear?" one said. Elias looked directly at him, his voice calm. "We learn unity. We learn patience. We learn to survive." The Queen felt the weight in his words. It wasn't arrogance. It was truth born from experience. For the first time, she began to see that pity was not the right word for this man. One evening, Serafina stood on the balcony, watching the twin moons rise. Elias joined her, his steps silent. "Do you ever miss your home?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "Every day. But being here, it feels like I'm learning a new way to see the universe." She looked at him for a long time. There was no fear in his eyes, no sign of weakness, only peace. In that moment, the Queen realized something quietly powerful about this human. His strength was not in his body or his lifespan. It was in his heart, in his mind, and in his ability to stay calm in every storm. The proud Queen of Valora, who had once pitied him, now found herself wondering, who truly holds the power in this marriage? And as a soft breeze brushed against them, carrying the scent of glowing flowers, Serafina's heart whispered the truth she didn't yet want to believe. This human is not here by chance. He is here for a reason the stars themselves might have planned. The golden sun of Valora rose over the shining towers of the capital, casting silver light through the palace windows. It had been 2 months since the human, Elias Ward, had married Queen Serafina, and though the people had first mocked him, now many spoke his name with quiet curiosity. Elias had done what no human was supposed to do. He had solved problems even the brightest Velaran scientists couldn't fix. Machines worked smoother when he was near. Even the air in the palace seemed calmer. Servants whispered that he carried some kind of unseen harmony with him, but Elias never bragged. He stayed humble, polite, and distant. He spent hours in the royal library studying the history of Valora, their wars, and their technology. The Queen often found him there, surrounded by glowing books and hollow scrolls, his face lit by soft blue light. One evening she entered quietly and asked, "Elias, why do you study so much? You already understand our systems better than many of my advisors." He looked up from a hollow book and smiled gently. "Because every world tells a story, my queen, I want to understand yours." She raised an eyebrow. "You wish to understand Valora?" "Yes," he said simply. "To understand your people is to understand why they fight, why they build, and what they fear." There was no flattery in his tone, only calm respect. Serafina studied him silently. Humans were emotional, easily frightened, easily tempted. Yet this one, her husband, was none of those things. It unsettled her. A week later, The royal capital faced a new danger. Strange signals began to appear in Valora's defense system. The Zareth Dominion, an empire known for conquest, had started moving its fleets near Valoran borders. The Queen called an emergency council meeting. Generals and scientists gathered in the grand chamber, their holograms forming a circle of light around her. Elias stood quietly at the side, not wishing to interfere. "The Zareth Dominion demands tribute," said General Calith. "If we refuse, they will invade. Their ships are many times stronger than ours." Seraphina's eyes were sharp. "We do not bow to invaders. We stand as Valorans." The room echoed with approval, but the tension was clear. Even the Queen knew this war could destroy them all. That night, as she walked through the quiet halls of her palace, she found Elias waiting by the balcony. "Looking at the stars, you heard the news," she said softly. He nodded. "Yes, war is coming. You speak as if you've seen it before." Elias looked at her. "Humans have seen too many wars. Sometimes we cause them, sometimes we survive them, but we always learn." The Queen folded her arms. "And what would you suggest, human? Do we surrender?" He shook his head. "No, you should prepare, but not the way your generals plan to. They rely too much on numbers and power. The Dominion will expect that. They won't expect something different, something human." She frowned. "Explain." Elias smiled faintly. "Let me see your battle plans. Perhaps I can help." The next morning, the Queen shocked her council by announcing that her human husband would review their war strategies. The hall erupted with protests. "A human advising us on warfare," cried one general. "This is madness." "Humans are weak," said another. "Their world barely survived its own conflicts." But the Queen silenced them with a single look. "He prevented the reactor meltdown when none of you could. I will hear what he has to say." Elias stood in front of the holographic battle map, calm and steady. "Your fleet formations are predictable," he began. "You fight in straight lines, trusting in shields and power. But humans learned that strength alone loses wars." The general sneered. "And what do humans use instead?" "Adaptation," he said simply. "Surprise, creativity. You don't always need the biggest weapon, you need the smartest plan." Then he adjusted the map, rearranging the Valoran ships into unexpected spiral patterns. "If you create confusion, you can turn their strength against them." The Queen watched carefully as he explained. His words were clear and logical, yet filled with strange intuition. Every move he made on the display felt alive, as if he could see the flow of battle before it began. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Even the most stubborn general stared at the new formation in awe. Finally, the Queen spoke. "You have our command for the next battle, Elias Ward." The generals looked shocked. "Your Majesty, it is decided," she said firmly. "Let the human prove his worth." Days later, the battle began. The Battle of the Three Suns, they would call it later. The Zareth Dominion fleet arrived in endless waves of metal and fire. Their ships glowed red like burning comets blocking the stars. The Valoran defense lines trembled before their might. From the command bridge of the royal flagship, Queen Seraphina watched in silence. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. Elias stood beside her, calm as ever. "Your orders, Commander Ward?" asked the pilot, nervous and uncertain. Elias studied the display. "Hold position. Do not fire until I say." The officers hesitated but obeyed. The Dominion ships approached, their weapons glowing. Then, without warning, Elias gave his command. "Turn formation 7, now!" The Valoran ships shifted in a perfect spiral, drawing the enemy fleet inward like a whirlpool. The Dominion, confused, followed too deep. Suddenly, Elias ordered the inner circle to break apart, releasing a burst of energy that reflected the Dominion's own fire back at them. Explosions filled the sky. Enemy ships collided with one another, blinded by their own power. The Queen stared in disbelief. "You used their fire against them?" Elias nodded. "Every weapon has a weakness. Sometimes you only need to look differently to see it." The Valoran fleet, inspired, followed his every command. The battle that was supposed to destroy them ended in a stunning victory. When the last enemy ship fled, cheers filled the command deck. The Queen turned to Elias. "You have done what even my best generals could not." He looked at her quietly. "I only used what I learned from Earth. We were never the strongest, but we had to survive against impossible odds." That night, the Queen stood before her council, Let it be known, she declared, that the human Elias Ward is no longer a guest of Valora. He is a protector of this kingdom. The chamber filled with applause, though many still looked uneasy. The queen ignored them. Her gaze was fixed on Elias, who bowed humbly and said, "I only serve peace, my queen." But deep inside, Serafina felt something she couldn't explain. Respect had replaced pity. Admiration had replaced doubt. She found herself wanting to understand him more, not as a husband of duty, but as a being whose strength was far greater than anyone had believed. In the following weeks, the Queen and Elias worked together to rebuild the damaged fleet. Soldiers greeted him with honor now. The same ones who had mocked him before saluted as he passed. One night, while reviewing reports, the Queen asked softly, "Elias, why do you never show anger? Even when others insulted you, you never raised your voice." He smiled faintly. "Because anger blinds judgment. On Earth, we learned that emotions are powerful, but control makes us stronger." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Valorans value power above all. Maybe that's why we keep losing what truly matters." He nodded. "Power without wisdom destroys itself." Their eyes met, and for the first time Serafina saw something she hadn't noticed before. Not human weakness, but human depth. Elias carried the quiet strength of someone who had seen pain, loss, and yet still believed in peace. A few days later, as they walked through the garden, Elias suddenly stopped. The stars above flickered strangely. "What is it?" the Queen asked. He frowned. "Something is wrong. The Dominion isn't finished. They're watching us, studying how we won." The Queen's heart sank. "You think they'll return?" "Yes," Elias said softly. "And next time they'll bring something far worse." The Queen looked up at the endless sky. The stars seemed peaceful, but now they felt heavy, hiding secrets of war. She turned to Elias, her voice firm yet filled with trust. "Then we prepare again, together," he nodded. Together. And though neither of them said it aloud, they both knew that something much deeper than duty had begun to form between them. A bond not of pity or politics, but of respect, courage, and shared strength. That night, as the Queen stood alone in her chamber, she whispered to herself, "Perhaps the stars were right to send him here. Perhaps this human is the key Valora has been waiting for." And far above, among the glowing constellations, the silent galaxies watched, as if waiting to see what this human, this quiet force of nature, would do next. Because somewhere beyond the stars, danger was already waking again, and soon, Elias Ward's true power would be tested in ways even he could not imagine. The sky above Valora turned an ominous red as the Zareth Dominion fleets approached. 3 massive suns shone on the horizon, casting long shadows across the glittering towers of the capital. The once peaceful star system now trembled under the threat of invasion. Inside the royal command deck, Queen Serafina stood with her human husband, Elias Ward, her normally calm face tense with worry. The alien generals were panicked, their glowing eyes flickering with anxiety as hundreds of warships appeared on the holographic display. "They are more numerous than we expected," one general said nervously. "Our shields cannot hold against all of them." Serafina's gaze shifted to Elias. He had been unusually quiet since morning, studying the enemy formations with unblinking focus. "Your Majesty," Elias said, breaking the silence, "we cannot meet them head-on. Their power is too great, but we can turn their strength against them." The generals laughed at first. "And what can a human do that we, the proud Valorans, cannot?" Elias didn't reply with anger or pride. He simply gestured to the holographic map. "Watch." The battle began with deafening explosions across the space above Valora. Dominion warships unleashed beams of energy that cut through the void, forcing Valoran ships into defensive maneuvers. The Queen watched as shields flickered and ships took damage. Then Elias gave his first command. "Divide the fleet into spirals. Use the sun's gravity to slow their advance." The Valoran officers hesitated. "That formation is unconventional. It risks more than it protects." "Trust me," Elias said simply. "Follow the plan." With a reluctant nod, the fleet began to shift. Spirals of glowing ships twisted elegantly through the void, drawing the Dominion fleet forward. The enemy's sensors expected linear movement, not complex patterns that confused their targeting systems. The Queen watched, wide-eyed, as the Dominion ships began firing into each other's paths, miscalculating their trajectory. One massive cruiser collided with its own fleet, detonating in a brilliant flash of red and blue. "By the stars," a general muttered. "This human." He predicted their movements. Elias didn't boast. He simply adjusted his commands, sending small squadrons to exploit every opening. The Dominion fleet, confident and arrogant, was now disorganized and panicked. The Queen felt a surge of disbelief. She had married this human out of pity, believing him fragile and weak. Yet here he was, orchestrating a fleet to defeat an empire many times stronger than Valora. "Your mind works differently," she whispered. Elias glanced at her. "Humans think creatively. We survive by noticing patterns others ignore. The Dominion expects brute force. They do not expect intelligence." Explosions continued to light the space like fireworks, illuminating the faces of Valoran soldiers in awe. Even the fleet commanders who had once doubted Elias now followed his commands without question. "Fire the secondary cannons on my mark," he ordered. 3, 2, 1. Now, a wave of precise attacks erupted, hitting the Dominion's flank simultaneously. Entire squadrons were destroyed in moments, their ships spinning helplessly through space. The Valoran fleet, inspired by Elias, moved with unprecedented coordination. Amid the chaos, a large Dominion battleship charged directly toward the Queen's flagship. Its energy beams tore through nearby defense drones, threatening to breach the palace shield. "Brace for impact," shouted one officer. Elias moved to the console. "Activate the gravitational deflectors, then rotate the fleet to the sun's edge. Use their momentum to slow them." The Valoran crew followed, unsure if it would work. The battleship barreled forward, but as it entered the sun's gravity well, it slowed. Its own force sent it tumbling past the fleet, where it collided with smaller ships. The Dominion commander screamed in frustration as his perfect attack failed. Seraphina's eyes met Elias's. "You predicted every move," she said in awe. He shook his head. "Not predicted, adapted. Humans adapt to survive." Hours passed and the Dominion fleet began to retreat. Valora's fleet, guided by Elias's strategy, had inflicted devastating losses. The stars above were streaked with smoke, debris, and the light of exploding ships. The Queen walked along the command deck, her mind racing. "I thought I married you out of pity," she murmured. "But it seems I underestimated you." Elias smiled faintly. "Your Majesty, I do not seek praise. I only do what is needed to protect." "You are not like any human I have heard of," she admitted. "You are extraordinary." He looked at her calmly. "Perhaps. But it is not strength or size that matters. It is the will to act when others hesitate, the courage to think differently, and the calm to endure pressure. That is what humans have learned." The Queen felt a chill of realization. She had been blinded by appearances. This human, quiet, unassuming, patient, was stronger than many Valorans she had known for centuries. As the Dominion ships vanished into the void, the Queen convened a meeting with the surviving generals. "Today we learned a lesson," she said firmly. "Strength alone does not win battles. Strategy, creativity, and courage do. And this human, Elias Ward, has shown us the power of these qualities." The generals nodded reluctantly, though some were still hesitant to fully accept him. Later that night, the Queen and Elias walked through the palace gardens. The stars reflected on the blue flowers, their light soft and peaceful after the chaos of the day. "You saved Valora," she said softly. "I thought I knew what strength was. I was wrong." He looked at her quietly. "Strength is not just muscles or technology. It is endurance, learning, and the choice to act for others. That is something humans practice every day." She paused, staring at him. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from awe. She had pitied this human, married him out of obligation, and yet now she realized he had the mind of a strategist, the courage of a warrior, and a patience beyond her comprehension. The next morning, news of the battle spread throughout Valora. Soldiers cheered, citizens celebrated, and the story of the human who outwitted an empire reached every corner of the capital. Even the youngest apprentices in the academy whispered his name. "Elias Ward," they said. "The human who saved Valora." The Queen watched him quietly, a strange feeling rising in her chest. She had married him out of pity, but that had been a mistake. He had proven not just his intelligence, but his spirit. He was a symbol of something larger, humanity itself. A species underestimated, mocked and dismissed across the galaxy, yet capable of surviving impossible odds. Perhaps humans are not as weak as we believed, she thought. Days after the battle, Elias requested an audience with the queen. "Your Majesty, there is more to prepare," he said. "More?" she asked, confused. "Yes," he replied. "The Dominion is retreating, but they will return. They are studying how we fight. We cannot rely solely on the fleet or weapons. We need strategy, training, and unity among our people." The queen nodded slowly. She realized he was right. "And you will help us?" she asked. "Always," he said simply. In the weeks that followed, Elias trained Valoran soldiers in new tactics. He introduced ideas never seen in the Empire: unconventional maneuvers, quick adaptation to changing conditions, and the use of environmental factors like the sun's gravity as natural allies. At first, the Valorans resisted. They were proud, accustomed to relying on brute strength and energy manipulation, but Elias remained patient, showing them results. Each successful exercise proved his methods worked. Slowly, the soldiers began to respect him. The same ones who had mocked his size and species now sought his advice. Even the Queen's Council, skeptical at first, started acknowledging his wisdom. Serafina watched him each day, fascinated. Every action he took, every calm decision, reinforced a truth she had begun to see clearly. Humans were underestimated, not because they were weak, but because their strength was subtle, enduring, and often invisible. One evening, the Queen and Elias sat in the palace observatory looking at the stars. The distant glow of the three suns bathed the room in warm light. "Elias," she said softly, "I thought pity brought you here, but I see now. It was my ignorance. I did not understand humans. I did not understand you." He turned to her, his calm eyes reflecting the starlight. "Your Majesty, I never needed pity. I only needed opportunity. And when given a chance, humans adapt, survive, and sometimes change the world." She smiled faintly. "You have changed mine." The stars outside seemed to shine brighter that night, as if acknowledging the rise of something remarkable. Not a king, not a queen, but a human whose quiet strength would soon be known across the galaxy. And somewhere in the shadows beyond Valora, the Dominion planned their return. They had not yet seen the full measure of human ingenuity, nor the calm courage that could outwit even the most powerful of empires. The real test had only just begun. The calm after the storm of battle was strange and fragile. The city of Valora gleamed in the light of its three suns, but Queen Serafina could not rest. The memory of the Zareth Dominion's fleet and the hidden weapon beneath the palace weighed heavily on her mind. She walked along the palace terrace, the soft glow of starlight reflecting off her gown, thinking of the human beside her, Elias Ward. Elias had saved the city, the empire, and the lives of thousands. Yet he had done it quietly, without pride or boast, as if he were only fulfilling a duty. Serafina, who had once married him out of pity, now saw him as something far beyond her understanding, a being whose strength was invisible yet unmatched. He approached her, calm as always. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "are you well?" Serafina shook her head with a small smile. "I am learning what true strength looks like." Elias tilted his head. "I do not seek admiration. I only act when necessary. Humans survive because we act when others hesitate. Perhaps that is what makes us strong." She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time without the veil of pity clouding her judgment. The human before her, the one she had once thought fragile, had faced impossible danger, controlled an ancient weapon, and saved an empire. Yet he had done it with nothing but calm intellect and courage. "Elias," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I married you thinking I was helping you. I thought I was being generous." He shook his head gently. "Your Majesty, it was never generosity that brought me here. It was opportunity. And when given opportunity, humans adapt. We survive, we learn, and sometimes we surpass expectations." The Queen's heart swelled. For weeks she had seen him solve problems, calm disputes, and lead armies, not by power alone, but by thought, intuition, and determination. It was a lesson that humbled her. True strength was not measured in size or magic, but in perseverance, courage, and the ability to act when the world expected you to fail. Word of the human's heroics spread quickly through Valora. Soldiers who had once mocked him now saluted him. Citizens told tales of the quiet human who had mastered a weapon no Valoran could touch. Even the scholars, initially skeptical, admitted his insight was remarkable. The Queen held a council meeting to address the rebuilding of Valora. Elias stood at her side, advising not only on technology but on diplomacy, teaching the Velerans to anticipate threats beyond the obvious. A young general, still cautious, whispered to another, "I never believed it, a human guiding an empire." The queen overheard and smiled. "Perhaps humans are not what we believed. Perhaps we have much to learn from them." Elias, overhearing as well, simply nodded. His calm demeanor never wavered, yet the weight of his influence was undeniable. As peace settled over the capital, Serafina realized something profound. Elias had changed not only the empire but her. Where she had once felt pity, she now felt respect and admiration. Where she had expected weakness, she now saw wisdom. And where she had anticipated duty, she now sensed partnership. One evening she found him in the palace gardens, gazing at the starlit fountains. The blue flowers glowed softly in the wind, reflecting the lights of distant stars. "You seem at peace," she said. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "Peace is not the absence of danger. It is the acceptance of responsibility. I have learned that humans find calm not by avoiding challenges but by facing them." Serafina studied him silently. His strength was subtle, almost invisible to those who relied only on appearances. Yet in the face of a galactic empire he had proven unmatched. "I once thought pity brought you here," she whispered. "But now I know. It was my blindness. I did not understand you or humans at all." He shook his head gently. "It is easy to misunderstand strength. It does not always roar or shine. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and steady until it must act." Her heart felt light yet heavy. She had married him expecting little, yet he had given everything: intellect, courage, and courage beyond imagining. The human's influence extended beyond the palace. Soldiers trained under him became sharper, faster, and more strategic. They learned to adapt rather than rely on raw power, to plan rather than react, to survive and excel in ways the Valorans had never considered. Even scholars, previously skeptical of humanity, began to study Earth's history and methods. The Empire, guided by the Queen and Elias, became stronger than ever, not through pride or magic, but through collaboration, intelligence, and calm endurance, the qualities humans embodied naturally. Serafina observed all this and realized that Elias's true gift was not in what he could do, but in what he inspired others to do. Strength, she saw clearly, was not just about might. It was about the courage to lead wisely, the patience to teach, and the humility to serve. Then came the day when Elias stood once more before the ancient weapon beneath the palace. Though it had been dormant after the last activation, its energy remained, waiting, as if alive. "Elias," the Queen said softly, "do you need to go there again?" He nodded. "The Dominion may return. The weapon must be ready. But this time, I will not face it alone. We must teach others to use it wisely as a symbol of unity, not destruction." Serafina smiled. "Then we face it together." And together they descended into the depths of the palace. Soldiers, scholars, and engineers followed, learning the ways Elias had discovered. The weapon was vast, humming with dormant energy, waiting for the next person brave enough to guide it. Elias stepped forward, connecting his mind and will to the core. Energy surged brighter than ever, yet he was calm, steady, and resolute. For the first time, others saw a glimpse of the human's true power, not in battle, not in force, but in the ability to act with courage, intellect, and heart combined. The Queen watched, her admiration deepening. "I thought I married him out of pity," she whispered. "But it is I who was humbled. It is I who must learn from him." Weeks passed. Valora thrived. Humans became respected allies rather than distant curiosities. Soldiers and scholars learned from Elias, and the Queen herself adopted his teachings in governance and diplomacy. The Dominion, shaken and defeated, had not dared to return. Yet the story of a human saving an empire, guiding a weapon beyond comprehension, and inspiring an entire civilization spread throughout the galaxy. Serafina often walked with Elias under the twin moons, reflecting on the journey. "You are extraordinary," she said quietly. He smiled, humble as always. "Perhaps, but I am only a human. Others could do the same if they chose to learn, to endure, and to care." The Queen looked at him and realized the truth. Humans were more than what others believed. They were not weak. They were not fragile. They were enduring, intelligent, and capable of unimaginable feats. And this one human, Elias Ward, had shown her that strength was not what you could see, but what you could do when it mattered most. In the quiet of the palace that night, the queen knelt beside Elias. "I thought pity brought you here," she said softly, "but it was I who needed your strength." He looked at her, calm and steady. "Then we are equals, Your Majesty. Together we protect not just Valora, but all who depend on us." She nodded, finally understanding the depth of what she had married. He was more than a human. He was a teacher, a protector, and a symbol of hope. And as the stars above Valora glimmered, the queen made a silent promise to honor him, to learn from him, and to let the galaxy see what humans were truly capable of. From that day forward, the people of Valora no longer saw humans as weak or insignificant. They saw them as silent titans, quietly powerful, enduring, and capable of changing the course of history. Elias stood beside the queen, no longer pitied, no longer underestimated, only respected. Together they guided the empire into a new era, one where courage, wisdom, and heart mattered more than pride or raw power. And in the hearts of all who watched, a single truth became clear. True strength is not in muscle or magic. It is in the courage to act, the patience to endure, and the heart to protect. The galaxy would never forget the human who married a queen out of pity, and whose true strength left even the proudest ruler stunned. The victory over the Zareth Dominion had brought a brief sense of peace to Valora. Citizens cheered in the streets and the Queen's palace shimmered with celebration. But for Queen Seraphina and Elias Ward, the calm was only temporary. The human had seen it first. The subtle traces in the Dominion's retreat suggested more than just a withdrawal. They were studying Valora, observing, learning. Elias had warned the Queen. The real battle was not over. One morning, a palace messenger arrived, breathless and pale. He held a sealed Valoran scroll marked with the Emperor's crest, a symbol of the first rulers of Valora. "Your Majesty," the messenger said, bowing low, "this requires your immediate attention." Seraphina broke the seal and unrolled the scroll. Her eyes widened as she read. Beneath the palace, hidden for centuries, lay a forgotten weapon, one of incredible power. It was crafted by the first Valoran kings to protect the Empire from ultimate threats, but its existence had been erased from most records, known only to a few elders and now to her. Elias leaned over her shoulder, reading silently. "This weapon, it is unlike anything I've seen," he said. "It seems almost alive." Seraphina's brow furrowed. "It was created to protect Valora, yet it has remained hidden. Why?" The scroll continued. The weapon drew its power not from energy cores or technology, but from something Valorans had long ignored: human-like willpower, empathy, and unity. It responded to those who could combine intelligence, courage, and heart. Elias's eyes narrowed. "This explains why Valorans never mastered it. Pride and power alone cannot activate it. Only those with patience, resilience, and care for others can." The Queen felt a chill. If the Dominion discovered this weapon, they could use it to destroy both Valora and humanity, and it was only a matter of time before they tried. That night, the Queen and Elias descended into the lower chambers of the palace, deep beneath the foundations. The halls were dark, lined with ancient technology and glowing inscriptions. The air hummed with energy as if the walls themselves were alive. "This place feels different," Seraphina said. Elias nodded. "It is waiting. Waiting for the right mind and heart to awaken it." The chamber at the center of the complex contained the weapon. It was a massive structure, glowing faintly with colors that shifted like liquid light. Its design was unlike any human or Valoran technology. The lines curved and intertwined in ways that seemed organic, almost breathing. "The Dominion cannot know about this," Seraphina said firmly. "If they do, they will try to take it." Elias studied the controls. "It cannot be activated by force. It needs connection, understanding it, focus. It responds to the spirit," the Queen frowned. "Are you saying it needs a human?" Elias hesitated. "Perhaps. One who understands not just machines, but the value of life, of people, of unity. It seems humans once had this ability. Some of it may remain in me." Seraphina's eyes widened. "You mean you could operate it?" He nodded quietly. "I can try, but it will be dangerous. The energy is enormous. If I fail, Then we will not fail, she interrupted. We cannot let the Dominion gain this power. The days that followed were tense. While the Queen organized defenses across the capital, Elias studied the weapon. Learning its rhythm, its signals, its silent language, he discovered that it responded to emotion, but not simple anger or pride. It required calm resolve, a willingness to act for others and trust in both mind and heart. Serafina watched him closely, amazed at his focus. Even the brightest Valoran scholars could not understand the weapon's design, yet Elias seemed to sense its logic intuitively. One night, as the suns aligned above Valora, Elias activated the chamber's interface. Energy flowed toward him, not violently, but as if drawn to his presence. The lights shifted, forming a halo around his body. The weapon hummed in resonance with his mind. "Elias," Serafina whispered. "Are you safe?" "I am connected," he said calmly. "It is responding." The Queen noticed a faint glow around his hands, a subtle light that seemed to expand and contract with his breathing. She had never seen a human or anyone control such immense energy without fear or hesitation. "This is remarkable," she murmured. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the palace. Sensors detected the Dominion approaching again. This time, their fleet was even larger, faster, more organized. They had studied Valora's defenses, and it was clear they intended to strike not just the city, but the palace and the hidden weapon. The Queen turned to Elias. "You must finish. Activate the weapon before they arrive," he nodded. "I will, but I need focus. The energy will test my limits." Serafina stayed by his side, offering silent support as he connected fully to the weapon. Lights flowed through the chamber like rivers of starlight. The energy surged in harmony with his will. Outside, the Dominion fleet fired upon the capital, energy beams slicing through the city. But the palace shields held firm, guided by the weapon's resonance. Valora's citizens looked up, unaware of the danger below, as light cascaded from the palace towers, creating protective barriers across the city. Inside the chamber, Elias felt the power reaching into every corner of the structure. The weapon's energy was overwhelming, a force beyond imagination. He focused not on controlling it, but on listening to its rhythm, understanding its pulse, merging his will with its logic. "Do not let fear take you," he whispered to himself. "Focus, protect, serve." The light around him expanded. The weapon hummed, pulsing in perfect harmony with his heart. He could feel every disturbance in the Dominion fleet, every energy wave, every shield fluctuation. Through calm intellect and sheer human endurance, he stabilized the energy. A wave of force rippled across space, reflecting the Dominion's attacks back toward their fleet. Ships that were meant to destroy Valora now collided with each other, their weapons misfiring, their formations collapsing. Serafina watched in awe as the human she once pitied became the guardian of the kingdom. The very walls of Valora seemed to shine brighter, filled with energy he commanded with wisdom rather than strength. Is he human?" a young soldier whispered nearby. "No human should do this." The Queen turned to them quietly. "He is more than human. He is a reminder that strength does not always appear as power or size. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and unseen, until it is needed most." Minutes later, the Dominion fleet had been utterly defeated. Their retreat was chaotic, their ships damaged beyond repair. Valora's citizens cheered, unaware of the weapon's activation below and the human who had saved them all. Elias collapsed to the floor, exhausted. His body had carried the immense energy of the weapon, yet he survived. Serafina rushed to his side, kneeling beside him. You did it," she said, her voice filled with awe and relief. "You saved Valora, all of it. Because of you." He smiled faintly, though fatigue was clear in his eyes. "It was never about me. The weapon responds to purpose, courage, and care for others. That is what humans learned long ago. That is what we bring to the galaxy." The Queen's heart swelled with respect, admiration, and a realization that had been growing for weeks. She had married him out of pity, thinking him weak. Now she understood the truth. Pity had been hers, not his. In the days after the battle, Valora rebuilt faster than ever. Soldiers trained under Elias's guidance. Citizens were inspired by the story of a human who had outwitted an empire and controlled an ancient weapon thought impossible to master. Even the Queen herself spent more time with him, learning not just from his strategies, but from his approach to life, calm, patient, intelligent, and full of courage. One evening, as the sun set over the sparkling towers, she looked at him quietly. "I thought I married you out of duty. I thought it would be easy. I never imagined the truth." Elias looked at her softly. "The truth is simple, my queen. Humans survive by learning, by caring, and by acting when others hesitate. That is our strength." She smiled, a mixture of humility and admiration. "Then you are not just my husband. You are the guardian of Valora, and perhaps the galaxy." And somewhere beyond the stars, the galaxy itself seemed to notice. A human, small, quiet, unassuming, had mastered something no one else could, proving that true strength was more than power. It was heart, mind, and will combined. The Dominion had been defeated, but new challenges would come. And when they did, Valora would face them with its most unlikely champion, a human whose strength no one had ever imagined. For now, though the queen stood beside him, no longer pitying, only respecting, only learning from the man who had changed her world forever.